Data Center 4.0, the future of the digital ecosystem. In this podcast series from DigitalCentre, data center leader, expert and APAC-based marketeer Omar Wilson will be in conversation with technology and industry experts on the future of the data center and the wider ecosystem. Today's tech-fueled transformation era is putting traditional data centers under unprecedented pressure. This pressure is coming from businesses, users and consumers from every physical, virtual and cloud-centric angle. What does the future hold for the data center? Hello and welcome to the next installment of DigitalCentre's podcast. Appreciate you all joining us again. What will be the last one for 2020, what's been arguably the most historic year of all time. So whether we're fortunate or unfortunate to live through it, I'll let the listeners decide, but we've certainly experienced it, so there's a lot to talk about, and not more so than in the tech sector. So as hopefully you've been following throughout this year with our committee members and also the very, very many guests we've had on the podcast through the year, we've covered a whole range of topics, and obviously ever since February and March, COVID has been a persistent part of that discussion for obvious reasons. Today, we're going to do slightly different approach. We're going to turn the tables and let Digital Realty be the guest. So that will include myself, but also our managing director for the Asia Pacific region, Mark Smith. Both of us will be interviewed as Digital Realty representatives for the last podcast of the year, just to talk about what it's meant for digital and the data center sector globally. So to be able to do that, so I don't have to be a split personality, Darcy has kindly stepped in from the DigitalCentre group to help be our moderator. So Darcy, I'm going to hand over to you to kick off the show.
Thanks, Omar. It's a pleasure to be here as a big fan of the podcast and someone who's been working with you guys on DigitalCentre for several years. I'm very excited to be in the interviewer's chair. So thanks for having me. Just to introduce myself, I am Darcy Thompson-Fields. I'm head of digital at Chief Nation. And as I said, I've been working on the DigitalCentre platform for, I think, almost 4 years now. I'm also a host of another podcast called the CEO.Digital Show. And yeah, very excited to be here with Omar and Mark. So, obviously it's great to have Digital Realty feature as a guest on this episode as our, kind of founding steering committee member. The theme of this episode, what we want to explore is data center growth and emerging APAC markets for 2021. So as you mentioned, Omar, also with us today, we have Mark Smith, Managing Director for Asia Pacific at Digital Realty. Mark has been at Digital Realty for over 2 years. He has previously held managing director roles at a wealth of technology companies, including VMware, ZetaGrid, and CenturyLink. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Well, Darcy, it's very nice to be here. Thank you.
And I think, as you now are in the hot seat, Omar, I'd be remiss not to give you your own little introduction as well. So, Omar Wilson is VP of Marketing at APAC at Digital Realty and has been at the company for 9 years. He's also integral in founding and helping us establish and build DigitalCentre.
Thanks, Darcy. Good to work with you.
Okay, well, let's get into some questions. So, 2020, as you mentioned at the start, Omar, has been an unprecedented year across the globe, but it hasn't stopped Digital Realty making progress. Can you touch on some key events and successes from the year?
Sure, happy to. I think from a sort of a high level piece, I'll let Mark do the flagship key process for the year. But from my perspective, I think the key trend, which I'm quite happy and actually proud of the internal team, is how we responded to COVID as a company. I think as in terms of going virtual and digital, we were like many companies, I imagine, and their Asia teams or Asia Pacific based companies, we had to react before the other regions. So we had to react really back in February, if you remember, Darcy, as well, from our perspective, which was before North America or Europe. So we had to adapt very quickly, and very, very proud of the internal team across digital for how we reacted in terms of the go-to-market function, but then also obviously the real frontline service people. And I mentioned on a call a little previously before that obviously the healthcare workers and the medical staff globally, you can't take that number one away from any of them, but no. I would put up quite close to those the engineering and operational staff in infrastructure like ours, because without the data centers and the network and telco infrastructure going, the world wouldn't function. So they definitely demand a lot of respect for that, and also credit for going into data centers throughout this period because of the nature of their work. So that's the areas I think I'd comment on for the year when I look back that makes me most proud from a corporate perspective, and happy to look back. But Mark, I was going to pass to you for the sort of the key initiatives and also your views on how digital's reacted during the year.
Well, I certainly can second your thoughts there, Omer. It's really been quite amazing how effectively the digital team in Asia Pacific has responded to, the COVID crisis that all of us have been working through. This year will be our best leasing year ever in Asia Pacific. Digital Realty has been in Asia since 2010, so we've been here 10 years, 1 decade, and so it's pretty exciting to see 1 decade in to have our best leasing year ever, and in Asia. And so, despite this global pandemic that we've all been kind of dealing with, the team has just done an exceptional job in terms of working through this. We've really had a strong year. Also, we continue to see strong demand throughout the region. We've been very active in building new data centers and capacity. Just to kind of run through the list of metros, but Tokyo, significant development there, large connected campus. Osaka, our third data centers continuing to be built in Osaka for a large connected campus. Seoul, Korea, we announced we'll be launching that data center next year, and particularly exciting in the sense that it'll be the first foreign-owned data center owned and operated in Seoul. It'll be hyper-connected, carrier-neutral, fiber-neutral. We really think we can provide a new value proposition to our customers in the Seoul market. So that's very exciting. Hong Kong, we announced a second data center in Hong Kong, also due to go live mid-next year. Seeing a lot of interest in Hong Kong, both from Chinese enterprises and cloud providers, as well as the Western enterprises and cloud providers. Really, kind of despite the politics that we all read, business is continuing to look very strong. We're launching Q1 next year. Our third Singapore facility, 50 megawatts, very strong demand in Singapore, and very exciting for us. And then, we've announced a significant property purchase, land purchase down in Sydney for what, when built out, what will become 250 megawatts in the
Incredible.
Greater Sydney area. So, really a substantial investment for us. And so, and we have many more plans as we look forward, but it's been a really busy year. And just to reiterate, as Omer said, just the way in which our team has so effectively responded to these challenges and created so much success for our customers and for our business. It's really been good.
Definitely. Well, it's so great to hear about so many successes and to hear, some positive outcomes for this year. And I think you're so right, both of you, to, touch on, thanking those kind of integral workers, because where would we be without the ability to be connected over this time? So, that infrastructure has really been integral. And, I don't want to dwell too much on the negative, but, there have been some impacts, across the globe. So it would just be good to find out, what the impact of COVID and the subsequent economic repercussions have been for Digital Realty, but more widely, the data center market in APAC, and where do we see that going?
Well, so I'll try to tackle that first, maybe a little bit, and then Omer, by all means, kick in. But so I'll start with the impact in terms of the impact on our team and us. We're all working from home and changing kind of how we work virtually, and depending on kind of all of our own circumstances, that's been a different level of challenge, having to work and also manage home life and everything else. I mean, that's a pretty substantial challenge for some, but one that the team has just done a great job. We've tried to really ramp up communication, support, despite the fact that we're separated, if you will, we're not able to meet face to face as much. Really try to over communicate with the team, really actively try to get people to raise their hand if they need help, because we're not going to necessarily know that, and proactively raise their hand for help, because we're a team. We're not a bunch of individuals. We're all working together, supporting each other towards common success for our customers. The other thing in the data center business, in terms of how obviously physically constructing these data centers, certainly in Singapore, where we had early on kind of significant COVID outbreaks, that did have an impact on our actual construction and build. But it's something that we and our teams managed quite effectively, and we're very much back to full speed in Singapore. But equally, the supply chain and managing the supply chain as we purchase the mechanical and electrical equipment that goes into the data centers from all over the world. That's a very substantial undertaking in terms of managing that supply chain and ensuring that we have access to the equipment that we need in a timely fashion. It's something, again, the team has managed very effectively. I'd also say that just as an industry, it's really changed habits. COVID has acted as a catalyst in terms of how we live our lives, whether it's entertainment or financial or whatever else. The usage of digital services has gone to a new level. It's overused, but kind of this paradigm shift, if you will. And so we're really seeing the infrastructure that we provide is truly has become an essential service to operate the economies of Asia Pacific. And so we are very happy to be able to provide this important essential service, driving the digital economy that's becoming so important. So I'll pause there. Omer, perhaps you want to add a comment or two.
Yeah, no, I think you covered the main points very well, Mark. I'd second all of those. From an industry perspective, as Mark said, the catalyst is the term. I think it's sped up existing trends. But I think what people are still slowly getting to grips with a little bit is that it's a lot of these changes are here to stay, and I think that's going to be interesting for next year as we start talking about next year. That and I just see it. You look closest to home. So I look at my own family, and it's interesting. Sort of my nephews were always the technology forebearers in the family, but now my father and my parents now are on Instagram, are now ordering online, and are now on social media, on LinkedIn. So those are shifts happening everywhere, and that's if you think from an industry perspective and technology company perspective, that's why they're doing so well. It's because there are whole new markets opening up in terms of populations across the world, and I don't think those habits they're not going to stop doing that, right? And then it's you can take it to even extremes of film releases, right? You saw those some of the big studios in the US now announcing simultaneous theater and online releases for film, which caused a stir in Hollywood. But it's the sign of the times. I don't think that's going to stop. As much as some of the traditional Hollywood producers may not like it, it's where the world's going. And as Mark said, in our industry, we've always been a critical part of everything. That hasn't suddenly happened overnight, but I think now it's now much more visible to people. That's what's happening. People now understand data centers and a lot more around the role we play.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And it's not just a shift in sort of industries or even the world of work, but in everyone's personal lives as well, as you said. And, there's so many adjustments that come with that. I think, we're looking at greater security risks as we get more kind of vulnerable people online. And, even as we're looking at sort of distributed workforces and, increasing the amount of connected portals and access and way into organizations. So I think it will be really exciting to see, how the technology industry responds. I think this year it's been very much a sort of scramble to get to, sort out immediate response and facilitate a digitized workforce. But I think, hopefully with this demand, we'll see some exciting further developments in the coming years. One of the things I'd like to touch on is the latest Data Gravity Index, which is obviously just launched and is kind of available for our listeners to download. And I know there's some really fascinating insights from that. So if we could perhaps share some on the podcast.
Sure. Let me do a very short intro, and then Mark, it'd be good to get your metro perspective on it as well. So we've released version 1.5, as you said, Darcy. The inaugural one was sort of it was a few months earlier, but it's quite exciting actually, since we've engaged in this formal index of the Data Gravity Index report. We've seen the concept being utilized across industry more and more. From presidents and CEOs of tech companies to government agencies from different countries, all really either looking at the city data gravity ranking of their city, or corporates talking about the issue of data gravity and the importance of where data is located and how it's being used. So that was always our aim, and we're relatively early on in the journey, so to see that sort of reaction already is very exciting. And I think this is going to become an industry standard annually in terms of the release. But as we showed with 1.5, we're probably going to do releases through the year as well as we have key updates. So really, very briefly, the key update on this one was just the number of metros analyzed. We went up from about 20 or so to 50 plus now. And exciting for us in APAC is it included a lot of key Asia Pacific metros, right from Osaka in Japan, all the way to sort of the fastest moving and the number one spot, which is Jakarta, on the global list in terms of speed of growth in the data gravity intensity. So that is very exciting for us. And then obviously having 4 in the top 6 of the fastest growing, Jakarta, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Melbourne, which was interesting for a lot of people. Various different factors there, but those 4 being the fastest growing is also very, very exciting for us. And I know Darcy will share it along with the recording, but I'd urge people to download and read it, and also look at some of the surrounding content from it as well. Those are my thoughts, Mark. I don't know from a digital perspective, and also you mentioned some of the metros we're building in. What does data gravity mean for you? I guess would be interesting as well.
Yeah. So I think what we're doing here is really interesting in the sense that it really shines a light on the importance of data, and just the amount of data that's being created, the importance of where it is, how it's being distributed, and for us, so it's very interesting looking at these different metros and the rate of change that we're seeing in terms of the data gravity index intensity, as you put it, Omer. That's right. And I think this is very much going to be a growing theme for the industry and for our customers. Where is this data? How is it being stored? How is it being transmitted? Where are the end users of this data? where do you need to put your compute in order to analyze this data, et cetera, et cetera. Super interesting. What it also does for us is, historically, Digital Realty has been kind of a scale data center provider for the largest, cloud service providers and whatnot in the industry. We have moved very aggressively into colocation, retail colocation and the like, targeting not just your scale cloud service providers, but also enterprises, particularly focused on the Global 2000 enterprises and their needs. What this means is that the importance of connectivity and providing highly connected campuses for our customers has become super important. And I think the data gravity story and message that we have really complements that whole effort around providing not just high quality, secure data center services, but also highly connected.
Thank you for sharing some of those insights. I think what we'd like to touch on next is to look a little bit to the future. So I think if you guys could share some of your key insights for 2021, and maybe we could start with, what does the next year and coming years look like for the data center market in APAC?
Okay, Omar, maybe I'll jump on that quick and start, and then by all means kick in here. So one, in Asia Pacific, at some point over the next year or two, the market, Asia Pacific will become the largest overall market by size, total addressable market globally, larger than North America, larger than EMEA. And so over the next year or two, we're really going to, become the largest market in the world for data centers. Two is we continue to grow at a very fast pace, well over 12+% CAGR, which is one of the fastest growth rates globally, certainly faster than EMEA and North America. So that gap in terms of size, the base is already going to be very large, and it'll just grow. And so Asia Pacific, as a really important market for our customers and for ourselves, will just grow. And so that's pretty exciting for all of us in the industry, to be honest. Also, I touched on connectivity and connectivity solutions and how important that's becoming for us. I think that will very much continue as we can work on building out these connected campuses across these metros that I mentioned earlier across Asia Pacific. And so that will very much continue. From a working, how we're working point of view, it'll be interesting. We continue to work from home and virtually, but I see ourselves taking on a much more flexible kind of work style, if you will, much more flexible as we hopefully get this whole COVID pandemic behind us as we go through the year next year. So, I'm really, I look at 2021 with great excitement. One more thing I should add before I forget is we'll be rolling out across Asia Pacific in 5 of the top 6 retail colocation metros. We'll be rolling out our platform digital and our retail colocation offering. It's in Osaka. We'll roll out in Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Seoul, Korea. And so that's going to be a really exciting new initiative for us in 2021.
Definitely. Another thing I'd like to ask about is, what do we see as the future for emerging markets next year?
Well, increasingly, we see our customers looking to enter these emerging markets and feeling that they need to be able to offer services locally. And so, without question, there's a lot of interest in these emerging markets in Asia Pacific. Particularly, I guess I would underline, India and Southeast Asia. First and foremost in Southeast Asia would be Jakarta. And so I'm sure soon your listeners will hear, further announcements from us early next year regarding Jakarta and other markets. Omer, any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I'd second all that, and Darcy, you're right. The emerging market piece is going to be one of the other defining points for the coming year, both in terms of the continued trend of people obviously coming online, and also if you notice globally now with what COVID's doing. There's even more innovation, it seems, coming out of the region. It's always been that way, sort of, Indonesian apps growing from Indonesia out, India likewise. I think because of what COVID has done around people having to adapt, there's more unique ways of connecting with the consumer appearing. Still, I mean, Silicon Valley is still holding its own without a doubt, and we see some huge names now, huge new names getting valuations there because of home delivery options or changing the way consumers buy. But just because of the nature of the population and the geography, we'll see more, I sense, Indonesia, India, China, and even some of the other surrounding Southeast Asian countries, where we'll see some more of these technologies come out. And the other thing I think it would be quite interesting for people to keep an eye out is e-gaming. Just to make that point again, it's been a continued trend in the background. If you look at the reach of games like all of the new releases, it's what Hollywood films used to be in 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's blockbuster type releases, and the number of gamers they reach is huge. And now with everybody online and unfortunately young people unable to go out, in various parts of the world for certain parts of the week, and even with developments in the vaccine, there's still going to be precautions around gatherings for a little while. So I think that trend's going to be accelerated and be a catalyst, as Mark said at the start, for that sector. And we're certainly seeing it in Asia a lot. So an interesting part to keep an eye on.
Definitely. It's really fascinating. Thank you. Well, thanks for all the insights. Before we close off the episode, I just wanted to check if there are any points, Mark or Omar, that you wanted to leave us with that we haven't covered in the episode.
No, I think we covered quite a bit, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. Thank you.
And likewise, Darcy, I think we'll do many more with you moderating in the new year. I think it's worked out well. And
I got myself a new job.
we'll have to keep that going, and then we'll certainly invite you back, Mark, in the year to keep us updated on the digital developments. No, it's been a great year. And thanks for all your support, Darcy, as well, and the DigitalCentre team in general.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. You can also hear more of my voice, should you wish, on the podcast, the CEO.digital show. And I know there's a lot of exciting plans and a fantastic roster of guests planned for the DigitalCentre podcast in 2021. And yeah, I'd love to return if you have me.
Always. Look forward to it.
Great. Thank you, Darcy. Thank you, Omer.